to somebody else that you really ought to talk to, who came in 1948. Her husband was on the history faculty. She is 90-something and sharp as a tack, so she has an adult's view of early Cameron and Bollingwood Road.
Do you remember the golf course or any disciplines we saw that are?
No, that's before my time. I do remember vaguely when they opened Alderman Road with paving. It was a dirt track and stopped, as he said, up there by Lewis Mountain and Thompson. And I remember a number of vacant lots in our area that we slowly watched houses built in. I, in fact, fell into the foundation of the house next to us on Cameron Lane at a very early age.
And
But,
were you year-round from the beginning of the time in Charlottesville?
yes, and I'm away for school and a few jobs, but yes, essentially there since then.
Can you tell us your name?
Vesta Gordon.
And my grandfather was here in the 1880s. My grandfather was here in the 1880s, Nathaniel Early. He was the last Early born at Earlysville. And he went to VMI first and then came here to law school. And I have a picture of him with his fraternity on the steps of Brook Hall, you know, that horrible building that should never have been built here. And so he played football as a law student, but there were no real rules in those days. He was known as Bull Early. And I heard him say, you know, he graduated the year they built Fairweather Gym. And he had great love for the university, and when I was about 10 years old, we would come to the football games, and that was before Alderman was finished. And Granddaddy would sit up because he had been the senator from this area, and Greene County also, and he would sit with President Dodden, and we had to sit down with peons. But I could look around and see Granddaddy sitting up there.
Is that Lambeth or Scott Stadium?
This was Scott Stadium. He actually was here before Lambert was built. I've forgotten where he played, but they played Trinity College, which is now Duke, and they rode down on the trains. And for up until about 1950, he was called the all-time center at the University of Virginia, but he was a big man. I got my height from him. He's about 6'3", and he said if they couldn't get him over the line any other way, they'd pick him up by the hair and throw him across. He had some wonderful tales to tell about the university and also about Brook Hall. They used it at the time to get the mummies. They would go out and raid the country cemeteries because they couldn't get enough people for dissection for the medical students. And he said after a country funeral, a day or so later, the guys would ride out and bring in people to dissect. And I do remember him telling that story. And I was afraid to go in Brook Hall, afraid I'd see something like that.
Same thing is true for what they call Smith Hall.
Where did you live?
He lived in Greene County, in Greene County. He was born in Earlysville in Wakefield, but he went to Fishburne and then to VMI and then back here to law school. He never practiced law, he was too busy. And he was elected in 1894 or something like that to the House of Delegates, so he had a big farm to run, and he also was in and out of Richmond, and his father-in-law kept sending money to come home on the train. He never had enough money to get home. They didn't pay their legislators much in those days.
And you live on Lewis Mountain?
I live on Lewis Mountain. My grandmother sold a big farm in Greene County and bought the home I live in now in 1952 from a doctor. She bought the home from a Dr. Clore who was at the University of Virginia. And he moved to Winchester, and my father found the house and they bought the house. And when she died in 1971, we took the house over, but we didn't move back till '87. But it's a wonderful house. I enjoy it.
Was Brook Hall the
I'm Ann
anatomy?
Shelton, Ann Early Shelton.
Was Brook Hall the anatomy area?
It must have been the anatomy building in the old days. I think that's what Granddaddy called
The
it.
name was Stiff Hall.
Oh, Stiff Hall. It was called Stiff Hall, he
My
says.
father told me that's where you would take a date.
Oh, to Stiff Hall.
And then right behind Stiff Hall, that they kept ice. It was called Penny Pit.
Oh,
Take the dates there.
so they had old ice houses around,
Well, it wasn't ice house, they just store ice.
store ice there. By that time, the Elliott Ice Company, and I always thought the big house that Hart Gary lives in was the Elliott Ice Company house.
Could very well be, it's certainly not built.
And I thought it was built in 1910, so I'm way off on that.
4 acres was the house I'm familiar with, and that's definitely Milton Elliott's house.
Okay.
He was an attorney in Washington, and he came down, but I think that would have been built in 1918, 1920.
Okay, well, I know that Elliot Griffin lives on Thompson Road, and he is, his mother was born in that big house, so I just feel like it was way before 1935 that house was there. I always heard my father say it was the Elliott Ice Company house, but I just don't know.
It's not in the photo of the 1934 aerial.
Right.
It's not there, and Thompson isn't even developed up that far, so.
It's
So-
quirky, because my house across the street is 1941. You know, a small house, so you would think the big one was earlier.
Yeah, I don't know, I just, and when they built the Catholic Church, and, you know, St. Thomas Aquinas, and then they put that, whoever the fellow, I guess is St. Thomas, but Daddy always called it the Pope sitting on the pot. And so I can't think of it any other way when I walk past it.
So, our house is, we were told when we bought our house in '76, which is the one, 1935, on the corner of Thompson and Fauquier, in Temple, that it was built for the first dean of the law school, that when he came to town and took the job, that he bought the lot and had designed the house with us. I would talk to a designer. I have no idea if that's true. It would be easy enough to find out who the
I
person
think
was.
it's in the paper.
It's right,
I think it's in Kirsten's paper,
is it? Okay,
Yeah.
good.
so.
Be fun to know. I don't know if anybody knows anything about that or about it.
Lester, who was the Cameron woman who had so much land? I would think that she must have been quite unusual.
That was somebody Sprigg Cameron, that was a Sprigg.
Yes.
Sprigg, yeah.
Cameron.
But it's just, you know, at that point in time, for someone to have that much land.
And 20s, that's when they had so much. Probably a widow out there was a lot of Julie large.
I wonder if anybody knew Mary Smith who built my house in 1941. Because I noticed in 1884, there was a Mary J. Smith who owned most of the or some of the property in the neighborhood. And I wondered if that would have been her mother, or, and how did somebody,
Mary Smith was Judge Smith's sister. Mary Smith was Judge Smith's sister. Judge Smith was a very prominent judge here in the circuit court judge, and he lived on Locust, a big brick house on Locust. And Mary Smith was his sister, and Miss Mary, the old gentleman across the street from me, Mr. Smith, who's 90 years old, told me that Miss Mary worked at the post office.
Yes.
that's what I heard.
That's what she
Uh-huh,
said.
and
Now,
that
that explains, she said it was a political appointment. and that
probably a
explains-
political appointment through her brother. And they lived down at Shadwell. I mean, I think that's where they were born, down at Shadwell. You see, so my father told me at one time that Judge Smith was born at Shadwell.
Thank you.
I'm curious, that original plan that showed what Jefferson had purchased, that they showed Observatory Mountain. Now, did he buy that with the object of putting an observatory there?
Yeah, he was very interested in that, because he had designed an observatory for Mount Alto, and that never got built. But that was his his dream that that would be an observatory.